If you're an animal living in the shadow of an erupting volcano, how much warning do you have before the molten doom comes for you? Well, if you're at Yellowstone National Park, the answer might be years. But the rest of us are gonna wanna hope we have a little bit more than that. It's me, and this is my channel. As far as big-ticket natural disasters go, volcanic eruptions rank up there for humans with tsunamis, hurricanes, and tornadoes. Most people don't experience them, but when they do, they are often devastating. And volcanoes tend to give us some advance notice that they're about to blow. First, the ground might rumble, and steam might billow from previously dormant vents. Then scientists can use that rumbliness and steaminess to estimate just how dangerous the impending eruption might be. All of which is to say, we usually know what's coming, and we usually have some time to get out of the way. But we don't always have that much time. So researchers are constantly looking for better ways to predict eruptions so that we can run to safety or, run away or whatever. One promising line of research involves seeing if animals can sense when an eruption is imminent, and if so, how they prepare. Because animals do seem to sense danger. They flee ahead of tsunamis, wildfires, and hurricanes. We've even seen pigs successfully escape lava flows, although maybe that was just dumb luck. There's also anecdotal evidence that animals can sense earthquakes, because when earthquakes hit, sometimes they hit fast. So having some advance notice would be nice. There are stories of dogs who shake or whine before an earthquake strikes, of birds that fly frantically around the sky, or roosts that won't stop squawking. Of course, anecdotes aren't great evidence, but that hasn't stopped scientists from investigating if animals can detect the warning signs of earthquakes. And most recently, a team of scientists set their sights on Yellowstone National Park. It's home to the world's largest supervolcano, and it has a long history of seismic activity. In fact, the park experiences thousands of earthquakes every year. The majority are pretty small, but they can still do damage. A 1985 quake with a magnitude of 7.3 caused extensive damage to the area around Yellowstone Lake, including North America's most active geothermal area. So, studying how animals in the area respond to these earthquakes could help us figure out how they respond to the much larger ones that come along once in a few 100,000 years. And there are plenty of animals to study. The park is home to over 60 species of mammals, including bison, elk, wolves, grizzly bears, and black bears, and they're all exposed to the same seismic activity. In order to understand what, if anything, the animals were doing before the quakes, the researchers needed data. So they turned to a source we've used a lot here on SCI Show. They went straight to the camera traps. Camera traps are just cameras with motion sensors in front of them, the kind that wildlife biologists have been using for decades to count elusive animals in remote locations. But in this case, the team added GPS trackers to those cameras so they could record the exact time and location of each animal sighting. The team focused on 4 areas of the park with different types of seismic activity. They wanted to see if animals responded differently to the smaller quakes that happen regularly versus the bigger, rarer ones. The result was a total of 16,000 sightings of 22 species over the course of a year. And the team found that several species did seem to change their behavior in the days leading up to an earthquake. Black bears were twice as likely to move around in the week before an earthquake than they were afterwards. Elk were 3 times as likely to move around, and bison were 5 times as likely to move around in the 2 days before an earthquake than afterwards. Notably, the animals didn't just move away from the areas where the earthquakes eventually happened. They seemed to move around a lot overall. The researchers think that means they sensed something was off but weren't necessarily trying to get away from anything yet. Meanwhile, a separate study out of China found that rabbits and jungle mice also moved around a lot in the days before an earthquake, but only after they had been trained to do so. They learned to associate an impending earthquake with danger by being given a food reward whenever they moved around in the minutes before an artificial quake. This trained response might explain why people sometimes hear animals making noises right before an earthquake. When an earthquake hits, it produces vibrations that travel through the ground. Those vibrations stimulate tiny hairs in the inner ear of mammals, triggering what's called the mammalian-specific vestibular system. That part of your brain then sends signals to the rest of your brain and body that you need to get moving. Essentially, the animals have a built-in early warning system for danger that comes with a little anxiety. But not all animals seem to have that built-in alarm system. Birds, for example, don't seem to be able to pick up on those vibrations, which might be why they do things like fly erratically around the sky or try to fly away and then just kind of end up back where they started. As for the Yellowstone animals, none of the species studied seem to show signs of escalating fear or anxiety, meaning they don't seem to have a hardwired response to earthquakes specifically. They're probably just sensing the general instability of the Earth itself. So, while they might move around a lot before an earthquake, they're not necessarily doing so because they know an earthquake is coming. So while we can't rely on animals to tell us when the big one is coming, these studies do suggest that we should keep our eyes and ears open. After all, we have seen pigs escaping lava flows. Knowing when an eruption is imminent is important because different kinds of eruptions demand different responses. When magma makes its way to the surface, it creates new landforms, gases, and hot water mixtures that build up pressure and temperature until the whole thing blows. And the amount of pressure and temperature determines how explosive a volcanic eruption will be. Explosive eruptions are ranked from 1 to 8 based on how high the eruption column gets. At Yellowstone, the VEI 8 eruptions are the big ones that happen once every 600,000 years or so and send ash all the way to Canada. The VEI 7 eruptions are 10 times more frequent and send ash as far as Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. These are the ones that could potentially wipe out all life within a 200-mile radius of the park. That's obviously bad news for anyone who lives anywhere near Yellowstone, which is why scientists want to be able to predict not just that an eruption is coming, but how explosive it will be. In the meantime, though, you can take comfort in knowing that the chances of a major eruption are slim to none. Yellowstone has been rumbling along since the Pleistocene epoch, and it'll continue to do so for millions more years. And the U.S. Geological Survey monitors the park's seismic activity around the clock. If you want to know more about what exactly they're listening for, you can check out the interactive website they've created. It explains the different kinds of activity they look for and how they track it. And if you want to know more about Yellowstone National Park, you can always visit their website. Now, one thing we haven't talked about is how animals might respond to a massive eruption. There is some evidence that animals might be able to sense impending eruptions because they're also able to sense changes in air pressure. Lots of animals use that ability to navigate or find their way home, and they might use it to get out of Dodge when a volcano is about to blow. We know that birds abandon their nests before an eruption, and fish leave lakes and rivers that are about to turn to ash. But there's still a lot to learn about how animals fare in the aftermath of a massive volcanic eruption. While the Yellowstone supervolcano is too large to accurately model, researchers are getting a lot of good data from New Zealand's White Island, which experienced a deadly eruption in December 2019. The island's native birds all but disappeared in the days following the eruption, and most of the introduced animals disappeared within a month. Researchers are hoping that understanding what happened there can help us protect threatened species in the future. Volcanic eruptions are tough for animals, but they're also tough for people. For a long time, the main response to volcanic activity was to evacuate the surrounding areas. But some people stay behind, and those people need support. The Red Cross and Red Crescent provide that support in the form of emergency supplies, temporary housing, and cash grants. Now, as the saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. That's why the Red Cross and Red Crescent focus on providing aid as soon as possible after a disaster. You can help them do that by donating to their work. Thanks for watching and learning with us.